Hey, what is up guys? How are we doing? And welcome back to another video. Now today we're talking about size because size does indeed matter. And Philips seem to think it's always better to go big, which is why they've sent out this absolutely huge monstrosity behind me, a 43-inch monitor. 43 inches on your desk with your computer. Crazy. And it pretty much led me to ask and then answer a single question, and that is, how big can a monitor be? Can this actually be useful? Is it simply too big? And is it a good display? Well, to answer those three questions, that wasn't actually one, was it, in the end? I had to put this on my desk, and actually that was a lot harder than you might think, because it takes up such a large amount of height and width that putting it on my moderately large desk, it actually dwarfed the whole thing, and I had to move a few things around to actually get it to fit. Granted, I do have two very large bookshelf speakers here, but even if you don't have that, you're definitely going to be struggling to get this thing on your desk, and if you have a smaller desk, then you may as well forget it because it's just simply not going to be suitable. Once you have got this thing on your desk though, you will notice some of the features found on the Philips, mainly being that this is a 4K monitor, so a resolution of 3840 by 2160 at 60 Hz. It's IPS and it is a completely flat panel as well. Now, being flat does have some advantages. It is going to distort your image less and it should pick up less reflections, but on a monitor this size, I think having a curve, especially when it's so close to you, does sort of help it just feel a little bit more comfortable in use, as this can sort of feel a little bit too big, well, maybe quite a lot too big if you're sitting really close to it, but of course if you've got a longer desk or if you're sitting a bit further back, then this is going to be a little bit less of an issue. One thing that actually is quite an issue though is the amount of reflections that this monitor picks up. It's got a slight coating to it, but pretty much it doesn't have a coating to it, unfortunately. It's really glossy, and while this is going to be good for raw image quality, it does mean that those of you that want to put this against a window or in a brightly lit room will find themselves seeing their own reflections, which can be very unpleasant, especially as the monitor isn't overly bright, even at max brightness, which means that this isn't going to be the best choice for really brightly lit environments. Move around to the other side of the monitor and you'll find evidence that this is actually a PC monitor, as we've got two DisplayPort inputs that can both drive this at native resolution and of course native refresh rate, as well as two HDMI 2.0 sockets, which is really good to see, but unfortunately they don't have HDCP 2.2, and this monitor isn't HDR either, so those of you that want to use this with something like an Xbox One S are going to find themselves with severely limited functionality. But on my Nvidia Shield I was able to watch 4K Netflix on this without issue, but sadly not Amazon Instant Video. On the other side of the monitor you do have your input selector button that also controls the on-screen display, and then you've also of course got your power input, which is just your sort of standard kettle lead, and then a USB hub as well. Controlling the on-screen menu is done with that four-way selector, which is one of the best ways to control menus in my opinion. Everything is fairly simple, although actually getting the menu up in the first place I found I was sometimes sort of knocking the selector the wrong way, but then you've got plenty of options to choose from, and calibrating the monitor if you want to do that is going to be fairly straightforward with a clean and easy to use menu system. So that's everything really you need to know about the monitor from a sort of technical point of view, but what's this thing actually like to use, and is it too big? Well, it was certainly too big to comfortably use on my desk, so I had to move it over to the other side of the studio in my sort of B-roll area. And in this scenario, it was actually fairly comfortable to sit with, but not necessarily comfortable to use. The main reason for this is just because it is so big, especially in the vertical axis. It just means that you've got to move your head way too much, and actually having to physically move your head a large amount up and down every single time you want to, say, look at something on screen, it's just not really that comfortable to use. If you're the sort of person that wants to have multiple things open at the same time though, then it becomes significantly less of an issue. And if you do want to use this as a general monitor, then you do have to ask yourself whether you're really going to utilize the size, or whether you just want it because it sort of looks quite cool and it's actually reasonably well priced. If you're someone that does actually want to play games on this display though, then this is definitely one of the stronger areas for me. While the IPS panel doesn't have the largest amount of contrast when you compare it directly with a V8 panel, everything had a suitable amount of pop to it. The colours looked fairly rich, nothing looked washed out, and while it wasn't as good as my Samsung 4K TV, everything did genuinely look pretty damn good. And being able to sort of use this with a controller, I find did actually help because I was able to sit a little bit further back while still being able to properly appreciate all the detail. So games like Batman Arkham Knight, or what was the other one I was playing? Rise of the Tomb Raider. Both of those two games I found it really did work on a display like this. And in terms of input lag as well, it's actually pretty reasonable. Yes, it's not really a gaming monitor, but compare it to my UC99 that I've been using as my daily driver for the last sort of couple of months. It's actually a lot more responsive than that, and I was able to play Counter-Strike Go without actually completely embarrassing myself at all. And if you know my skill level in Counter-Strike Go, you'll know that that's actually quite an achievement. But sort of bringing this back round to the broader question of, is this a good monitor, and is this monitor too big? I think Philips have done a good job at the execution here, as it's a very flexible display that you can use in a whole variety of applications. But it is too big for the average person. It is too big to simply put on your desk, and I think you're going to need a very specific use case scenario to actually get the most out of this display and to use it in a comfortable manner. Speaking about what Philips have actually implemented though, it is a shame that it is very reflective and that it doesn't go, that bright. And it's a shame that we don't have things like HDR and we don't have things like HDCP 2.2, as that's something that you can get from a television at the same sort of price point, although those will be 8-bit panels and won't be able to scream HDR like some of the really expensive televisions will. But if you are looking at this and you're seriously considering it, as long as you've got the space for it and as long as you've got a reason to need, and that's right, not to want, a reason to need a 43-inch monitor, then I think this is going to serve you very well. But for the rest of us, the normal people that don't have any use for a thing like this, we just want a display that we're going to actually be able to comfortably use, then I would steer clear of this one. But overall, not a bad attempt from Philips at making a very unique product and one that I have actually thoroughly enjoyed using. A massive thank you to you guys for checking out this video. Let me know, am I wrong? Is 43-inch a great size for a monitor, or have things just got absolutely out of hand? Let me know down in the comment section below. Like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and subscribe for more videos just like this. And if you want to see a little bit of nostalgia, you can find my review in the top right hand corner of that 40-inch Philips display from around about 4 years ago, where my review probably wasn't anywhere near as well shot as this one. But there you go. A massive thank you once again. Thanks to Philips for supplying this review unit as always, and I'll see you in the next video. And I was able to play Counter-Strike Go without actually completely embarrassing myself at all, which if you know my Counter-Strike Go skills, you'll know that that is actually quite an